Live from the NFL Scouting Combine, Matt Williamson joining me. I'm not live from the Combine. I'm at home. Matt's in Indy. Everything going on day 3 of the Combine. We've got testing. We've got the biggins on the ground running defensive line Combine testing, an injury for maybe the number 1 pick in the NFL draft, and some NFL news for some veteran players as well. Coming at you on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Love our everydayers. Appreciate you. Let us know you stop by. Hit the thumbs up on YouTube and make sure you're subscribed. And welcome to the new listeners as well. You can subscribe on any platform. We are everywhere, YouTube and anywhere you listen to your podcast. Some Fast TV as well. Look on your local listings for Peacock and Williamson and the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's episode is about the NFL Scouting Combine. And interesting note, you kind of made the joke there off the air, Matt, that you go to Indianapolis and you miss the Combine because you're on the radio and the Athletic testing is finishing up right now for the defensive linemen. And you are there, but you're on Radio Row and you're doing radio, and then you get most of your information from the folks on Radio Row and maybe even out and about. And I'm wondering if you've gotten any new nuggets for us, that maybe a GM that had too many cocktails or a scout here and there, or what have you got for us? Well, what's going on at the NFL Scouting Combine before we get to some of these testing numbers, a couple big time runs from some big time players?
Yeah, heading out for some deep dish pizza. That's always our last night in town. That's been like a 5-year tradition here. Big, thick, like lasagna style pizza. And certainly we'll rub some elbows tonight. We always do that last because it takes a lot out of you. It's really filling, and then you don't want to like wake up the next day, and kind of that's like the grand finale. But yeah, I mean, on Radio Row, there's a lot happening. And there are TVs set up, but I mean, you're on the radio. It's hard to really pay attention. So I did watch some of the 40s of the big guys, but I didn't see any of the edge stuff. I'm getting the impression that T. Higgins is going to be a Bengal. Just some Bengal stuff that we were kind of chatting about today. I think he's going to end up staying. They're going to work something out. And I think they're going to totally revamp their defense. I mean, like almost the entire defense could go, so a lot of cuts, maybe Hendrickson stays or goes. I didn't get a good feel on that, but just some kind of a Bengals nugget is keep Higgins, dedicate the whole offseason to defense after that.
Yeah, the Higgins one is interesting because it doesn't seem possible, and it seems almost like counterintuitive that you would let potentially Trey Hendrickson go, or that you'd even be able to sign Hendrickson to the contract that a defensive end of his caliber is going to demand, and then sign T. Higgins, and then do the even bigger mega contract for Ja'Marr Chase after you've already done a big contract for your quarterback. And it seems rather dubious. And if you had to choose, you would seemingly choose the defensive end over the number 2 wide receiver.
Yeah,
and I would imagine Higgins could probably cash in somewhere. So that one's, and he did, and I don't even know what it was in response to, but everyone retweeted T. Higgins' tweet. He just tweeted cap.
Oh, did
yeah?
What he said?
Cap.
Cap.
As the kids say, that means
That's
BS. That means BS. But I don't know what he's saying cap to. So that'd be like, if you say something I don't believe you, I say that's cap. Because I think that you're full of baloney, but I don't know if he's responding to Duke Tobin or if he's responding to maybe a report that was out there. But like, it was kind of, that's all. He didn't like quote anything. He just said,
yeah.
So
I'm not going to look into that because it's over my head.
Free agent wide receivers, man, they love to just be really cranky and weird and kind of moody. They're almost like emo. They're emo kids. Those free agent wide receivers, they always want to request a trade. They always have this weird, vague.
I don't even know what that is. I feel like I'm talking a different language here. I don't know what cap is or emo.
Oh man! All right, let's talk draft
Yeah, we got
prospects.
some testing in there. Yeah, some impressive stuff
as well. We talked Travis Kelce and news on Trey Smith getting the tag and Myles Garrett, where he's at with the Cleveland Browns. Abdul Carter, let's start there because he is one of the top picks in this NFL draft. And I wonder if this will affect it at all. Will it be a tiebreaker between, say, if you weren't sure about the quarterback, you had this defensive end graded higher, but Abdul Carter's got this injury. And so maybe it makes the team go in another direction, or maybe it's a tie between Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter, and Abdul Carter can't work out and he's got this little bit of an injury, and Travis Hunter goes crazy and is everything you wanted, and it's enough of a tiebreaker. So could he fall out of the top 10 even? Is it that big of an injury? But according to reports, there were tests at the combine, and this isn't something that bothered him throughout the season. Tests, according to Adam Schefter, tests today revealed, this was yesterday, that potential number 1 pick Abdul Carter has a stress reaction in his right foot, and the Penn State standout will need to decide soon whether to have surgery. And apparently, according to his agent today, now they have said that he's not planning to get surgery and that it's a minor thing that has not caused him any problems. And the plan is to not have surgery, according to, I believe, Drew Rosenhaus is his agent there. And so
good news.
I don't know if it's good news that he doesn't need surgery, or that they just think that surgery will hurt his draft stock more. So they want to wait until he gets with the team and see if there's something else to it. Does he have a medical recheck? And then, because I think even after surgery, it's only like 8 weeks. So if you thought he was going to be 100% after that, he would be fine, post draft. So maybe it'll be the thing where he does a surgery after his pro day. I don't know what's going on. And we didn't even get a height and weight for him either at the combine, which is
something I really wanted to see.
That I don't like. And that's as important as anything for him. So
to me, that's a little dubious. I mean, he doesn't look huge to me. I mean, it's not like he's going to, sometimes somebody's going to get height and weight on him. I mean, he's not going to get away with that, but it's his goal to be light here so he could run great before he found all this out. And so he's like, I'm not getting on a scale here because it's makes me look a little smallish. I don't know what the strategy is, but that was at the top of my list almost for Carter coming in here. Is I want to see every physical dimension, hand, arm, weight, all that stuff, because he looks a little smallish to me.
If you want to have the most accurate pre-combine measurables on NFL prospects, go to whatever college they went to and go to what they're listed as. You subtract an inch and you add 10 pounds. That's every single prospect, just about. Maybe sometimes the big guys can really fluctuate, and maybe a guy's 340 and he gets down to 330. But almost every time the prospects get bigger and stronger and add weight and add good weight before the combine, and they're shorter than what their listed weight is. And so that's why when you're 6'3", 250 or 6'3", 240, it makes me wonder. And to be honest with you, maybe another one of the biggest losers, because we saw what his actual height and weight are, is Jalon Walker. And Jalon Walker was in the 6'1" territory, 240s. And
that's what we kind of feared a little bit, right?
32-inch arm length. So the trifecta, he's too short, too light, and with shorter arms. And for a player that is a much better prospect on tape as an edge rusher than as a pure linebacker, he sure did weigh in as a pure linebacker. So even if you think he could still be the Hassan Reddick, Nolan Smith type of undersized edge rusher in the NFL, you would still need the right team and the right scheme to be able to utilize him. And he would still have to fly and work out like crazy. And as of now, we don't have any measurables for running and testing for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and maybe he will. But I remember us talking about that several times leading up to the combine, that I want him to look like an NFL edge rusher, not an undersized linebacker masquerading as an edge rusher. So I think that is a big one.
Yeah.
One height weight note. Well, I did notice several of these D linemen that worked out today had noticeably different weights than at the Senior Bowl, which was only like 2 weeks ago. I forget who it was, but somebody lost 20 pounds.
There's a few of them. And by the way, I'm looking at Jalon Walker right now, and it's not even like 6'1.5". It's 6'1" even. Jalon Walker. 6'1" even, 243. He's got big hands, 10.5-inch hands, but 32-inch arm length. So that's very short, both for arm length and for height for an edge rusher. And 243 is also very light. That is off-ball linebacker, and he was working out with the linebackers. Does the team like him enough as a pure linebacker that could blitz to be a first-round player? But That's really hard. And to be honest with you, that's for
Not a lot
me,
of those.
it's really big for him being a first half of the first round player. And we'll see how he runs. And maybe he's someone that people, but someone like Nolan Smith, he was a productive college player. He ran like 4.3 something. It was still the 32nd pick in the draft or whatever it was.
Right. There's not many Micah Parsons out there that can do all the above. I mean,
right. And everyone wants everyone to be the next Micah Parsons. And
right.
It's just difficult. And again, that's why you want to see because Jalon Walker, Abdul Carter and Jalon Walker's listed height weight were very similar. And so if Abdul Carter shows up at 6'1" with 32-inch arms, it's gonna be a problem for him being the number one pick in the draft. In fact, I could guarantee he won't be if that's the case.
And even Parsons, how much linebacker does he play now?
Oh, none.
He rushes a passer.
Yeah, he's defensive end. Yeah, clearly, it's the more valuable thing, and that's what Jalon Walker is better at. When you watch him play off-ball backer, it's not the special thing. The special thing is how explosive he was, kind of coming in off the edge and getting after the quarterback and destroying blocks, even though he's still sort of raw as a rusher. So now you're a raw player. Now you're undersized. There's another undersized player that's coming in a little light, but he ran fast. We'll get to that one.
Nice.
You mentioned some players that came in at very different weights. And when a player loses a lot of weight before the combine, clearly they're just trying to run the fastest they possibly can in Indy. And especially when you already see, it would be one thing if you're like, oh man, was he really playing at that weight? But this is a really interesting one. And a player that, and look, people overreact immediately. All I'm seeing on social media is, oh my God, top 10 lock now for Shemar Stewart, Texas A&M defensive end. He showed up 6'5", even 267 pounds, which is 14 pounds lighter than just a couple of weeks ago at the Senior Bowl. He was 281 at the Senior Bowl. Now he's 267 at the Combine.
And they can fluctuate that quickly.
Long 34 and an 1/8-inch arms. So, that's solid. That's what you expected. And we kind of saw his length at the Senior Bowl. So none of this is surprising. Being 14 pounds lighter is a little surprising. And he did it so he could run fast. And so did he run fast? He did. 4.59 unofficial. I saw 4.60 as well. So somewhere around that 4.59, 4.60 range for a 6'5" defensive end, 267 pounds. I'm sure he'll play closer to that 280 mark. 1.6, 10-yard split, which is really good. 40-inch vertical, Matt, 10-11 broad jump. And that's what you wanted to see for a guy who had some troubles actually getting to the quarterback. But if you dare to believe and you're going to draft Shemar Stewart, you want to see the athletic package that you think you can work with and try to get him developed to a player that can get to the quarterback. And he's got a decent pressure rate. He just couldn't finish the job. I tend to see him as a player that is for sure now going to be overdrafted based on what I saw.
That's funny. I took the words out of my mouth. We've been doing this a long time. All those A&M guys kind of underperformed in terms of stats. And I found it interesting that his partner in crime, Broughton, lost a lot of weight and got down to his Purdue playing weight, and Stewart's fluctuated his weight. And I'm with you. He screams getting overdrafted because people are going to count this twice. He didn't become a better football player because he jumped 40 inches.
Yeah, what's going on?
He's a good athlete,
What's going on with those A&M guys? Nick Scorton, right?
Scorton,
yeah. He 6'2" and 3/8, 257.
Yeah, I think he played at like 280 plus at A&M.
He was listed at like 290, wasn't he?
Yeah, he looked it too.
At least
he was much more productive at Purdue at like 260.
Yeah, very interesting. Why did he even? So that must have been bad weight that he got up because he's more of a power player and he wanted to continue to.
Yeah, I assume they wanted him to be huge,
And maybe they wanted both their edges to get big, and so then they started doing their combine workout stuff, and the weight just fell off because they both lost an average of 20 pounds, which is pretty wild for the Texas A&M defensive ends.
And I guess you could look at that in a good way. Like, well, if we're really supposed to be playing at the lower weight, maybe we would have been more productive. We put on weight for you guys for your scheme, and therefore I didn't get the ball.
Yeah, for sure. But with Scorton, it's weird because he's a power player. So what does he look like at a new weight? It's almost like a completely different player. It's a different.
How do you evaluate that? I mean, the tape you watched is not really accurate.
Yeah, what is he going to play at? And I guess since you do have some Purdue tape of him in the 260s, apparently. But man, 257?
Right. That's like a 3-4 outside linebacker.
That's a shocker. I think a big winner from the weigh-in is TJ Sanders out of South Carolina. He's got phenomenal tape, defensive tackle. He was just a hair under 6'4", 6'3" and 7/8, and 297. He was listed, I think, in the 280s as an undersized defensive tackle. So to be able to get up to that weight and get close to 300 pounds for him, big hands, long arms. He's a really good pass rusher, but the thing with him is, size. And so to be 300 pounds or close to 300 pounds is massive for TJ Sanders. And there was no testing numbers for him for the 40 and all that, but just watching him in the drills, he's really smooth, and he was running around just fine at 297. So I think that's a win for TJ Sanders. And clearly he's somebody that was wanting to gain weight to be, to prove he's an interior every down tackle.
Yeah, great one. I mean, I kind of was worried that maybe he's that, not quite Grady Jarrett or Geno Atkins, but was a certain type of defensive tackle, and that was it, and undersized and had to win with quickness. But his tape is pretty darn good too. So that's a nice, I mean, I don't know that many schemes are going to look at it and be like, oh, we can't use that, especially on third downs.
Oh, yeah, he's awesome. That might be what he needs to get into the late first round. And I think he's at least a high second rounder all day long. And he's the type of guy that everybody that watches him, he becomes like their pet guy. I feel like TJ Sanders is on everyone's my guy list. It's like, oh, my guy's TJ Sanders. And everyone loves him. Like, no one wants to put him in like the top 20 or anything, but everyone's like, oh, my favorite second round guy is TJ Sanders.
Which means he goes 32nd to the Eagles,
You're right. Exactly. Oh, I mean, that is a perfect.
That's exactly what's going to happen. Milton Williams goes out, he comes in, and
in fact, the guy that I mocked at 32 in my mock draft, which is probably so accurate, I don't think I have to do a 2.0, Matt, was Derek Harmon out of Oregon. And he's another guy that actually threw down and decided to work out, even though a lot of the top defensive linemen and defensive tackles specifically weren't running. Derek Harmon out of Oregon, 6'4.5", 313 pounds, 34 1/3 inch arms, 10 3/8 inch hands. So, I mean, just looks the part, ran sub 5.0, so 4.95 40-yard dash at 313 pounds. Big win for him. Looked like he was moving around and doing well in the drills. And really for him, the problem isn't his high-end reps. The problem for him is the consistency, and there's too many low-end reps on tape.
Yeah. I mean, I think today was definitely a good day for him, but I've watched him on tape again recently because I frankly think the Steelers could be in the market for someone like him in the first round. His lower body's like unproportionately lean. I don't love that. He's pretty top-heavy. And just watching him on tape, I didn't think he was a great change of direction guy, that he was sort of linear. And he did all the linear stuff well, so
right.
Good. I mean, his stock went up, but I kind of thought that's who he was,
Yeah, we need a 3-cone is what we need on Derek Harmon. He was somebody, he's kind of the interior version of Shemar Stewart, where they look the part and they're good at getting an initial win, but then they can't finish from that win. And if they don't get the initial jump and the initial win, then they really don't win at all.
And that doesn't play in the league. You know?
And I have reservations on both those guys, even though they look the part, height, weight, speed, and going to be very tantalizing prospects. And, that to me, that's a recipe for potentially being overdrafted, but that's good for them. Good, higher stock, get drafted higher and see if you can develop those guys. Because some of those guys do develop and do hit, even though they aren't super productive in college.
No, but again, it's kind of like you said that well. I mean, in my opinion, that let's not get too crazy with combine numbers. I mean, let's go back to the tape here. And the overdrafted could be in play for those guys.
With the exception of arm length, maybe the biggest winner of all of the defensive linemen at the combine so far is James Pierce out of Tennessee. He was flying. He had the fastest 40 time. He ran, let me find the unofficial number, 4.47 unofficial with a 1.56 10-yard split, which is just smoking fast at 6'5" and a quarter. So 6'5" and a quarter, 245. Now that's lean, but it wasn't any more lean than he was listed. It was a couple pounds more than what he was listed. I think he was listed 6'5", 242. He showed up almost exactly that, 6'5", 245, 10-inch hands. Just he's got sub 33-inch arms, which is one. You just wish there was, because he's 6'5". You want to have more length there for him to keep people off his body, especially if he's going to be a little light and a little bit of a lean rusher. But man, he's out there in the wave drill, just smooth moving around, just flying in his 40-yard dash, easy speed, 4.47. But he is kind of a thin-hipped guy, and the arm length, a little frustrating. You want to see that 34-inch arm length, and you could start to really dream about him being a Brian Burns type of player.
Yeah, and again, his 40 kind of stole the show. His 10 was awesome, which is just as important for those edge guys, that great get off. And he does have that sprinter look about him. And I mean that in a good and bad way. I mean, the waist looks like he's got like a 24-inch waist. I mean, it's that.
He shouldn't have wore 27 either, because it makes him look. He looks like a wide receiver on the field at Tennessee.
Oh, I understand.
Like a 99 on it, just to make him look a little bigger than he is.
I don't know if you noticed, though. I mean, the positives and negatives are almost equal, though. I mean, because he had the shorter arms, and his vertical was really bad, 30 inches. I mean, like D tackles are out jumping.
I mean, at 6'5", 31 inches, he's throwing down, highlight dunks. So it's not like he's unathletic at 31 inches, but you want to see that match the burst of his get off and his athleticism, and is a little less than Shemar Stewart, 40-inch vertical, right? There's Ty Robinson out of Nebraska who had a really good day. 6'5", 288 pounds, 4.83, fastest of the interior defensive linemen, 4.83, 40-yard dash, and he had a better vertical than James Pierce, 33.5.
Yeah, and he's a disruptive player, and there's probably some stereotyping there, but some people were questioning his athleticism. I mean, he's a little lighter than some of these other defensive tackles, but I think he gained a lot of steam today. Good day overall. I mean, I will say some of the defensive tackles, we were paying attention to it as it was live. There were some shorter arm guys than I expected amongst the D tackle group today, including Graham, which I didn't love. Farmer's one of my favorite out of Florida State. He was the opposite, though. He's a nose tackle with long arms. Like, you don't see that very often.
Yeah, defensive tackle arm length is not nearly as important, obviously, on the inside, and that's why some guys, especially offensive line, you say, "Oh, this guy's not a tackle because he doesn't have long arms. You can fight inside a little easier." And sometimes I think your arms can be too long because it's hard to be quick and it's hard to be as powerful if you got really long arms. You don't want to be Bambi inside either, so you kind of want to be in that sweet spot. And I think as long as you're over 32-inch arm length, I think you're fine at defensive tackle. If you've got like 35-inch arms, sometimes it can be a hindrance for an interior defensive lineman.
Especially if you have a great get off.
Right. Yeah.
And to get my shorter arms into you quicker, low,
First. Actually, one more note on Mason Graham and his weigh-in. A couple more winners and losers from the weigh-ins in the early performances and testing at the combine. And notes on Travis Kelce comes back. Trey Smith getting the tag. And Myles Garrett did not want to be around in Cleveland next. Just a few more nuggets from the combine. Another weight that was much lower was Mason Graham. And Mason Graham, I think, had just a little tweak of, I don't know if it was a hamstring or something. So he unfortunately wasn't going to work out. He needs to really nail this process in the spring so he can have the highest stock possible and maintain where he's at in that, that next tier of top prospects, because there's not that many guys that are in that tier of prospects in this NFL draft. And, lock himself into a top 10 pick. But Mason Graham he was listed 320 pounds at Michigan. And he looked a lot smaller than Kenneth Grant, who was listed at 340, but anyone's going to look smaller next to Kenneth Grant. Turns out he weighed in 296. So 6'3.5", 296 for Mason Graham. And as we mentioned, the 32-inch even arms, smaller hands as well. Not too small, but again, just like not ideal length in hand size and weight for Mason Graham, but that tells me he's working really hard because he wants to run fast.
Yeah, and I kind of knew that, or we all knew that when he took the pads off in this process, he probably had nowhere to go but down. He wasn't going to be the most athletic guy out there, and I assume he's saving it all up for Michigan Pro Day, really hone my 40 and have some explosive stuff there, because I think his stock certainly isn't going up in the last day or so. But maybe it will.
I want to highlight the defensive linemen, and there's a whole bunch of them from Ohio State really quick. Not great for Jack Sawyer, 6'4", 260 pounds, which is fine, but 31.
I don't think he's a good athlete at all.
Yeah, 31 and 5/8 31 3/4 arm length. Like that.
He screams day 3 to me. Even just Ohio State was on all the time in Pittsburgh, and I'm like, people are too excited about this guy. He takes a lot of plays off. Everyone thinks he's this hustle tough guy. I never saw it with him. I just don't get what the fuss is about with this guy.
When I put on the tape originally, and again, we talk about it a lot. I don't watch a lot of football during the fall, and so I kind of jump into it as a, it's minor league football for me. I'm watching it as for the draft, and I put on the Ohio State tape, and the JT Tuimoloau, the other defensive end opposite Jack Sawyer, was immediately the one that I thought was the better player. And then everyone told me that Jack Sawyer is a better player, and he is a good player, and I just didn't see the juice from him coming off the edge. Tuimoloau's a bigger, much more easier mover, more athletic. He's a really good run defender as well. He looked perfect. I mean, he looks the part. 6'4", 265, big 10.5-inch hands, 33 and 3/4 arm length, which is solid. And the way he moves, he's got that former basketball player, basketball athleticism, and
changes directions much better.
Yeah, and like he might lack a little burst as a pass rusher, but he's one of those guys who's going to be a rock solid starting kind of number 2 defensive end in the NFL. And Jack Sawyer, I could see going either direction.
Yeah, I mean, if you told me one of them has a 8 to 10 year career and leaves with a bunch of millions in the bank, I wouldn't pick Sawyer.
Last one. Oh yeah. And then there's Tyleik Williams, the nose tackle, the big interior defensive lineman, 334 pounds for him, just a hair under 6'3", 334. And so yeah,
nose all day long.
Yeah. He's a nose. If you want a nose, he's your guy.
I can't imagine him going the first round.
One more note here. This one is on, where did he go? Omar Norman Lott out of Tennessee. 6'1" and 7/8, so sub 6'2", 291 pounds. And he's a really good player, and he's explosive interior rusher, but you worry about his run defense. And just at that size, he's so undersized for teams. And I'm sure he tried to even bulk up to get to 291 because he doesn't look very big on tape. And, maybe he can play some. He's got some longer arms, so maybe he can play some 5 tech for some teams potentially, even though he's not that tall. He is kind of screams rotational rusher.
Yeah.
But I wasn't enamored with the run defense and the size from Braden Fisk last year. And so maybe Norman Lott can be like maybe even a light version of that. But right now it's going to be hard for me to see him even go in the second round at that size. But he's got an opportunity if he works out really well and proves he's super athletic like Braden Fisk did. Maybe he could help himself and put him in that second round territory. But I'd probably look at him as more of a rotational interior rusher.
I do think he had some juice, but he was not a high snap count guy at Tennessee. He does scream 3rd and 8. He's going to be out there, rotational dude, but there's upside. I bet he tests okay.
A lot of the linebackers coming in really light. I also noticed that kind of across the board. Like none of them were 240 pounds, I don't think, even though some of them were listed 240 pounds. And so I think they're just all, it's all about speed and coverage ability in the NFL. So I'm sure that's what all the off-ball linebackers are working on right now. They're all 220s, 230s.
That's not uncommon, unfortunately. I mean, it's not unfortunate, but what's interesting to me is, this is maybe a bigger conversation, but are nose types going to be more sought after because we play so much cover 2 and we want light linebackers? We at least need some big body in the middle of the field to keep the linebackers kind of clean first.
Yeah, allow everybody else to operate.
Yeah.
And then a lot of teams are kind of trying to zag with everyone going lighter. They're trying to run the ball more, and running back, running games they're trying to make a comeback because coaches still want to run the football. So you got to stop the run inside still to get the 3rd down.
Yeah, I don't know if 220-pound linebackers are going to be as drafted as highly as maybe they were a few years ago.
I mean, but if you can't cover, then it doesn't matter if you're 240 pounds, you can stop the run because you got to be able to cover too. So it's I think
there's a linebacker shortage right now.
It's making the good do-it-all linebackers more valuable. That's what it's doing.
Yeah, there aren't many of them.
Yeah.
You guys have one, and then it starts to get a little crazy.
Travis Kelce confirming that he is not retiring, correct?
That's what I heard. I mean, I read that just before we hit record here. I'm shocked by it. I don't think it's a great decision, but what do I know,
And apparently he was ill during the Super Bowl too, which might explain why he looked so bad. He looked botched during his performance. So maybe that was potentially the reason why there. And
that's fair.
Speaking of the Kansas City Chiefs, Trey Smith is going to get the franchise tag while they try to work out a deal for him. So
didn't see that coming, but hey, you really couldn't have. I mean, the Super Bowl had to confirm we can't lose this guy. I mean, we got to keep the interior strong. Probably draft the tackle.
They got to add offensive linemen as it is. They can't lose some of their best players. But man, that's a lot of money to pour into your defensive line. But I think this is more of a move of them buying themselves some time.
And the thing about franchising guards, it's the same price as franchising tackles. Like it's just an O-line franchise tag. It's not great business. So maybe it just does buy them time on let's talk contract for a while.
This Myles Garrett thing might start to get pretty ugly, and we don't have a lot of time, but I just want to report the latest that's going on there. And
I don't think he's going to play for him. I think he's just saying I'm not going to play for the Browns anymore.
We've already heard the GM say that they don't want to trade him. Their head coach was on the podium at the combine, and he was like, Myles Garrett, we expect Myles Garrett to play, and he is a foundational piece for our football team, and we want him here now and next year and for years to come. And so that's still the Browns stance. But Myles Garrett's not really having it, and he's going to have to maybe make this thing a little uglier to maybe get out of there if that's what he wants, because he has already said that he's not going to sign a long-term deal. Is that enough?
Isn't the writing just on the wall that that's what's going to happen? He's going to ugly it up or not play, or I just don't think he's going to be a Brown. I think he said he's made up his mind. I'm done playing for this football team.
He has to say, and they need leverage to trade, so they probably can't. They don't want to come out and say that they're going to trade him. So maybe it's posturing on their part. But yeah, Myles Garrett definitely has to say, look, I'm not coming to anything, so I won't be there.
Right. I just think the writing's on the wall, whether it's post-draft or post-June 1st or whatever, but I don't think he's going to put the pads on for them anymore.
And some people are trying to talk, Matt, like, they're going to draft a quarterback at 2, and then it'll have a really good offseason. They'll talk Myles Garrett into it. Like, I don't think that's the case.
That wouldn't be that appealing to me. I mean,
good.
Signing for Cousins or
Cleveland, because that always goes so well.
Right. History is, that'll solve the problem. I don't know how you can talk him back into it.
Well, that story is going to linger for sure. We'll see what happens with Myles Garrett, and maybe a lot of talks going on about potential trades behind the scenes right now from a lot of high-powered folks in the NFL in Indianapolis. No doubt Matt is going to rub some elbows after a few cocktails with some of them downtown Indianapolis tonight, and he'll have some more reports for us next week when we get back to it and talk about everything from the NFL Combine, all the latest in the NFL, all the trades, all the rumors, and of course, it is draft season. So make sure you subscribe on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts, and Matt and I will be back next time right here, Peacock and Williamson.
Very nice.